There have been some good books written in the last 10 years, definitely. But the vast majority of the books that I think we love as homeschoolers were from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s.
Mhm.
Children's books really changed in this, well, starting in the early 70s.
Welcome, everybody. This is Gretchen Rowe, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this session of the Demi Learning Show. I'm so excited to welcome my sweet friend, Jan Bloom. We are conference buddies who see each other in passing all summer long, and this is the longest opportunity I will have to talk to Jan all summer. So I am wildly excited to talk to you today about unlocking adventure and sharing stories boys will love. I have three of my own. I know how hard it is to hook a boy to be a reader, but I also know that if you can make it happen, you never get them to stop reading. And that is wildly important. And I'm going to let Jan introduce herself. Jan?
Hello. So my husband Gary and I, well, I guess two things. We heard about homeschooling in 1982, and we thought it sounded like an interesting idea. Back then, people were still being charged with truancy if they homeschooled, and it was kind of scary. But our oldest daughter, Jenny, was kindergarten age, and we had signed her up for kindergarten, and then we heard about homeschooling. So we thought, oh, we'll do this for a few years because we heard about homeschooling at a Labrie seminar. Randall Macaulay talked about Charlotte Mason, which later became Susan Macaulay's book For the Children's Sake. And then that summer we heard Raymond Moore talking about delayed academics, and the two of them fit together. So we decided, okay, we'll do this for a few years. And anyway, that was how it happened. I started buying books because back then a lot of the curriculum companies that we know now did not exist or would not sell to
Oh,
homeschoolers. And so we just started buying books. I had Honey for a Child's Heart by
one of
Gladys
my
Hines.
favorite books. Love
And you
it.
know what? I can't find my copy. I went to get it, and I have Honey for a Woman's Heart and Honey for a Teen's Heart, and I don't know where my honey. So I probably loaned it to somebody, and just know that a loaned book is a lost book, and I have no idea. So, but Honey
I
for a
think I
Child.
know where mine is, so maybe I'll send it to you.
Oh, but Honey for a Child's Heart is my all-time favorite, and For the Children's Sake and Books Children Love by Elizabeth Wilson. They were all really important in our beginning years because I didn't know much about good books. I was raised in a pretty conservative Christian environment, and in trying to kind of put the pieces together, my mom was 2 months premature back in the 1920s, and they thought she was going to die. Her incubator was a shoebox on top of the wood burning stove. And so now we know that premature babies have issues oftentimes with learning. But back then they didn't know that. But I think my mom had learning issues and she wasn't comfortable reading. She had beautiful penmanship, but she did not read for pleasure. And therefore, when we wanted to get books, I think she didn't really understand because it wasn't anything she did. And so I had no parameters for my reading growing up. And I read some not good things. I read some very stupid things. I read some banal things. And then when I was a teenager going to some youth group thing, the speaker said that Christians, if you wanted to grow as a Christian, you should read only the Bible, books about the Bible, and books about Christians or missionaries. That fiction was at
Very narrow.
best a well-told lie.
Oh
And
my
so
goodness.
yes, that really scared me because I had read books that were not very good. I mean, just my sister was 4 years older than I, and she would bring books home, and I was reading, Phyllis Whitney and Mary Stuart Gothic romances when I was,
Sure.
12 years old and not getting a lot of the stuff, but, and so I had stopped reading fiction. I was afraid of fiction. And now here I am deciding to homeschool my kids. So Jenny was 4 at the time we heard about homeschooling. JJ was born on Jenny's third birthday, and Jody is between the two. So in exactly 3 years, I had 3 kids. So to think about
Goodness.
homeschooling this corporate child was kind of interesting. And we began, and because of Raymond Moore's stuff, school can wait, better late than early. We just did a lot of stuff together. I read out loud to them. We did a lot of nature stuff. We just lived life. They learned how to cook, and Jenny learned how to sew, and she just sewed baby doll clothes for every creature in the house. And so when uh, when I decided we needed to get serious about actually, learning how to read and reading, we just started getting books out from the library, and we would go with these boxes that had handles, and we'd each have one. And so the librarians had a love-hate relationship with us because they loved us. We were great for circulation figures, but then they had to put all these books back, and we would each come in with our box of books. And one day we went to the library, and there was a sign. It said library sale, room B. I was like, oh, library sale. So we went to room B, and there were just all these tables full of books. And I didn't really know that much, but the books were probably a quarter a piece. And it was like, oh, let's get these books. And so we started getting books. And then we started finding other library sales, and we started going to thrift stores. And so I was just collecting books. Some of them I knew because of my resources, and some of them I didn't know. And then I just got too many books, and we would find duplicates, and it's like, oh, well, that's such a good book. Let's get that, and we'll give it to someone. So friends and I traded books, and then my friend Karen and I decided to go to the Minnesota convention and get a table at the used book sale. And so this would have been 1989. And by then, a lot of the curriculums were selling to homeschoolers. So
Sure.
people would walk around the tables in this room, and people were selling their homeschool curriculum. And they'd get to our booth and they'd say, what do you have? Books. And, even then, people didn't really get it that you can read books and you don't need workbooks. I mean, workbooks are great. I love workbooks, but um, so I did that by myself for about 10 years. I would just go to all these different book sales in the Twin Cities and in Minnesota because I am a Minnesotan. And um and then a couple of friends and I, who are all doing this, we decided we needed to put together a worksheet or just a booklet to give to people because we were learning stuff. We were exchanging information with each other. And we thought, oh, we'll just write it down, and then we can give that out to people who come to our booth. But two moms were in Mississippi, two of us were in Minnesota. And for a year, we tried working on it, all four of us, and it just wasn't going anywhere. So I took on the project because my kids were kind of the oldest of these four moms. And so I had the kind of the most free time, not really, but and so I had a dial-up computer, and I mean, I can't believe I did this. And I would go to the library, and I would Xerox, don't even use that word anymore. I would copy pages from author information books, and then I would type out all the titles the author had written, and then I would combine all the information and do a brief biography on each author because I really like to know who I'm reading and why they
Sure.
wrote. And it was really, I like I said, I can't believe I did it. And that was back in like 1998 and 1999. And then one of the gals from Mississippi had a copy of the booklet that I had, and she gave it to Bob and Tina Farewell, who did Lifetime Books and Gifts. And Bob
Hmm.
Farewell called and he said, "We'd like to sell this in our booth." And I'm like, "Why would you do that?" I mean, I don't know what I thought I would do with my books, but it never occurred to me that other people would buy them. So then we got to know Bob and Tina, and my friend Mary from Mississippi called one day and she had signed up to do a convention in Arkansas and she couldn't go. And they said that we could do it in her place. But we had never left Minnesota. And so Gary and I loaded up boxes and crates of books. We had a minivan and we drove from Minnesota to Arkansas and set up in this little booth. And it was really fun. It was like, oh, wow, this is kind of fun being somewhere other than Minnesota. And then that year I did two more conventions. And then the next year we found out about more of them. And then the next year, Gary quit his job and so that was 26 years ago. And we've been traveling together for 26 years, buying books, selling books. So I totally forgot to bring my books in with me because I always forget to bring my books to talks. But I have two books. They are called Who Should We Then Read? And so volume one has 157 authors. And these were the authors that I got to know when I was first getting to know authors. And then
Right.
people would come up to us and say, "I can't believe you don't have this author in the book," or "I can't believe you don't have that author." So then I did a second volume 10 years later, with another 157 authors. So both of those books are, yeah, you can, if you go to my website, bucksbloom.com, you can order
Hmm.
them there. And we've sold a lot and it's there. But back when I was doing these, the first one more than 25 years ago and the second one 15 years ago, I mean, there wasn't as much known about self-publishing.
Sure.
And so these books are really basic. I mean, they're just really basic and they have a spiral binding. And I hand type them. And but I even go to them for reference. If people ask me questions, it's kind of funny when we're in the booth, I'll be like, "Oh, just a minute. I know where I can get that answer." Because of course, my brain doesn't remember it all. So, that's what Gary and I do. We did six conventions this year. Back in the early days when it was just the two of us, we had a cargo van with a bed in the back. And one day Gary heard Paul Harvey say that you could stay in Walmart parking lots. They would let you sleep in Walmart parking lots. And so Gary said, "We can sleep in Walmart parking lots." It's like, no, we can't. I mean, I thought that was just the weirdest thing in the world. And then we were at the Denver convention. So this would have been like 2001 or 2002. And we had gone there and there was no nearby campground. We had stayed at a Walmart on the way there one night. And then we got to Denver and the nearest campground was like 25 miles away. And Bob Farewell said, "Just go take a shower at the Flying J." He goes, "I got a free shower on my gas card. Just take my gas card." And I was like, "Oh, I can't believe it. No way." But there was a new Flying J right by where we were having the Denver convention. So Gary and I went over there and we handed in Bob's gas card and got a shower and they gave you two towels and two washcloths and we go, oh, it was just crazy. And I thought, oh, I can't believe this. This is the weirdest thing ever. And so I don't think we ever stayed at a campground after that. Flying J and Pilot have the best showers, and Loves has really good showers. So Gary and I were just book gypsies for years and years. We slept in our van. We like Cracker Barrels better than Walmart's. Cracker Barrels are really quiet, and it's their corporate policy to let people sleep there. And I'm talking way too much about us, and I'm not talking about books for boys. So 9 years ago, we moved to Suffolk, Virginia. Our son was in the Navy and he was rear-ended. His head hit the steering wheel, broke the steering wheel. He has traumatic brain injury. So we moved here to live life with him. And it's not at all what I planned to be doing. We live in JJ's house. We kind of took over. I mean, there are bookcases everywhere. I think I have 47 bookcases in JJ's house. And and so
No,
JJ,
those aren't the bookcases that you all haul into conferences, are they?
no, they're the bookcases we had before we got a new trailer that was taller and Gary built new bookcases. So then we have all the old bookcases. Plus, you can go to here I will show. These are from Home Depot and they're these wonderful crates and they stack on top of each other. And so that's crates from Home Depot and we really like them. And they will deliver them. It's wonderful. Yeah, so we have a lot of bookcases and it's a problem. I don't It's just that libraries are getting rid of books. And so, you know what? I know I have all these books that I don't need, but I can't bear that nobody can find them. So, I am not a homeschool librarian, but there's this whole group of crazy women all over the United States. And actually, there's some in Australia and there's another one in Europe. And I wrote it down. You can go to biblioguides.com and they have a page for private lending libraries. And you can find a library maybe in your area who wants other people to be able to enjoy them. So I wanted to say that I have all these things here that so much to say. But Gretchen told
Well,
me I can
if you
hand in all my information and she'll put them in the notes
yes,
that
we
you
will
can download.
definitely include this information in the notes. And I think it's important to understand if you've read a book and you've loved it, it's like a friend. You don't want it to go away. And I have to say, my husband and I moved back to North Carolina now 12 years ago. And his only criteria for me was that for every book I moved, I had to give two books away.
Oh my
And
word.
and do you know to this day there are probably 2 dozen books that I'm like, oh, I gave it away.
Yep,
I'm
yep,
so sad that I gave it away. And
yeah.
of course now I come home from every conference with a book, and often I've visited Jan and gotten one from her. But I think what's really important is if we can teach our children the worlds of escape and adventure. Someone asked me at the last conference in Atlanta 2 weeks ago, well, what do you like to read? And I stood there for a minute and I thought it it would be a shorter list if you asked me what I don't like to read, because there's just so many things out there. And my husband did say to me last year, stacks of books are really not a nightstand made because there's literally a stack of them beside my bed. But Jan, let's get to the meat of our conversation
Yes,
here.
yes,
How
yes.
are we going to get boys to read? What is your favorite book to recommend for a boy?
For a boy to read or about reading to boys.
Maybe for a boy to read, because I think a lot of our questions came from parents who are like, how do I get my boy to read?
Well, obviously the first thing is to read to your children, starting when they're very young. And if they love what they're hearing, it's much more likely that they're going to love what they're reading when they start to read. And so to have them know how to sit still, to have them listen and hear. Sometimes, I mean, the whole Charlotte Mason narration thing, we did that a lot. Okay, what happened in this chapter? Who's doing that? Who are the main characters here? Which ones do you like? Which ones do you not like? So not just reading the books, but talking about what you're reading
Mhm.
and not being afraid when they're young to read the same book over and over again. I think for a lot of us, we think, "Ah, we just read that." But that really grows an appreciation of children loving words when they want that same story. And you can bring other stories in, but if that
Right.
one child comes to you with their favorite book, embrace that, just say, "Oh, I love this book too." And one thing, if they love a book, if they get a book for a gift, if they find a book they like at a thrift store or something like that, let them put their name in the book.
Hmm.
And ownership, I think, is really important. And I think it's really important that each child has their own private bookshelf and nobody else can borrow that book without permission. And so, if we do things to encourage our children to love books and to think of them as friends and as valued possessions, I think that's a really good start for when they're reading on their own and they, get to choose a book when they go out. If you're at a thrift store, yeah, of course you can look for books that you would like or at a library sale. So the girls would help me at library sales, and JJ was the guard. So JJ would just sit with our piles of books that we are collecting. And so he doesn't like, he had reading issues when he was young. And
Mm.
so he didn't like to read fast, whereas the girls could read quickly. They could read the titles quickly and grab them. And I'll put this information into, but vision therapy was really important in our family. And oh, here we have visiontherapy.com. Ha, how
Right.
easy. But all my kids went through vision therapy. It's different than getting corrective lenses. It actually works with what happens when your eyes see those letters and how it gets sent to the brain. And so JJ did not read comfortably till he was 12,
Mm.
because he just had all kinds of issues. And so he went through vision therapy.
I'm
One of the
so
sad
glad
things
you
about
mentioned vision therapy because this is the untold epidemic in our society right now. And so, just for clarification for parents who might be listening to us, what we're talking about is not whether your child sees 20/20, but what we're talking about is that your child's eyes track across a page the way they're supposed to. And there's a lot of things that come into play with this. If you have a child who can't retain math facts or a child who reads across a line and skips a line, so they come back to the third line and they don't even realize they skipped a line, or their handwriting is messy and all over the place and they mix upper and lowercase letters, or they have an explosive temper, it's very likely you have a child with a vision issue. And so I will make sure that I include the website that Jan has referenced. I have another one that I'll include. This is going to be a vast set of show notes for you that will be important for you to access. But I have to tell you, I probably had a conversation yesterday with my 120th family this summer about vision issues because your child doesn't know you don't see like they see. And so they figure there's something wrong with them. You figured out how to surmount it. Why can't they? So figuring that out is absolutely enormous. What Jan is saying is just profound. And we will give you some references in the show notes toward that end. Two of my boys needed vision therapy, one before he could learn to read, and one who had no vision issues until he hit puberty. And they showed up at puberty. And if you think about it, puberty is designed to make your muscles lax so your long bones can grow and your eyes are muscles. And so it made a tremendous difference for him. He's 20 now, and he rolled out at 6 o'clock this morning on the way to his work, and he's reading East of Eden, which is like a doorstop. And he said, he often says to me, the biggest gift we gave him was figuring out that he had a vision issue and resolving it. So I really want parents to understand how important that is. So do you have
And just
favorite authors for boys?
oh, oh, so many. I should have written them all down. Well, I have a piece of paper here and it has a lot of them on there. Um, so a lot, I've been doing this a long time, and a lot of the books that we could find back 20, 25, 30 years ago are getting harder and harder to find. And there are different reasons for that. The biggest reason is a lot of libraries got rid of those books years ago. And
Uh,
where we live, the libraries have a 10-year rule. If a book is older than 10 years, the copyright date, it gets sent to the library bookstore, which is a wonderful place. I love to go to the library bookstore. But 10 years, that that's pretty much all the good books, I think. There've been some good books written in the last 10 years, definitely. But the vast majority of the books that I think we love as homeschoolers were from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s.
mhm,
Children's books really changed in this, well, starting in the early 70s. Society really changed in the 60s, but children's books were still really good, trustworthy. They were great. And then in the 70s, you started seeing, maybe a family where the mom and dad weren't married or at least currently married, and you know older sisters getting pregnant and some drug use. And then into the 80s you started with the goosebumps and the spine tinglers. And then the 90s things just kind of, that's when they started getting really weird. And a lot of the really um gross things started
mm.
being, because if boys aren't reading, let's just give them what they like. Let's just give them, burps and farts and Captain Underpants and all these horrible things that don't that don't encourage them to be men of God, that don't encourage them to be good men, good boys. And so most of the books in our booth, at least, um, no, I wouldn't say most of them. A lot of them are pre-1970. Every Every book in our booth is a chosen book. So there's a reason that we have each book in the booth. Either I've read something by the author, someone else who I trust has recommended it, or it's on the curriculum of someone whose worldview I trust. And so we have some more modern books. Um, we you know, if I find a Chuck Black book at the thrift store, it's so exciting. And I take a picture and I send it to Chuck and Andrea and say, I'm so sorry somebody got rid of this book, but at least I get it. And it's always fun to find Brian Davis or S.D.
Mhm.
Smith, Andrew Peterson. There are these Christian men who are writing really good books for boys. And there are people who I don't know if they're believers or not, and they're writing good books for boys too. So it's pretty fun to find the new books, but I would say you got to be much more cautious about the newer books, because if you're not sure of the author's worldview, there might be some really bad, wrong, questionable things in there. If you go to the young adult section of a library, which I would recommend that you do not, just at random, start taking books out and start looking through them. And it's truly shocking and horrifying. The language, the S word, the F word, you know, it's like these are in the young adult books, and that's been a change in our culture. There are no limits anymore. Nothing is off limits in young adult books, and it's trickling down into children's books. And so be really cautious and careful. And I have this whole big long list of places to go and publishers, curriculums. If you go to a curriculum fair, just go around and collect catalogs from Sunlight and from Andrew at IEW and Classical Conversations and Ambleside, and just have these catalogs and then just look through them and get ideas for
Mhm.
books that are good, because there are a lot, and there are how are we ever even gonna know a lot? And I'm always learning good books to look for, and it's really fun to find new books. Spencer, our 11-year-old grandson. Oh, so we live with JJ and then his 11-year-old son Spencer, and we've been homeschooling Spencer since the shutdown when he was in kindergarten. And then we just kind of kept on doing it. And I didn't expect to be homeschooling at this age or anything, but happily, Spencer did not have any eye issues, and he's an avid reader. So now he's going through Landmarks. Landmarks were a nonfiction series started in the 1950s, and they're true stories. They do have some invented dialogue. Of course they do. We don't know what these people said, but this is likely what they said. And there are 122 US landmarks, 63 world landmarks. And they're everyone who knows children's books loves landmarks. They're just
Mhm.
wonderful nonfiction, but interesting. So JJ's we're kind of going up through American history. So he did Columbus. We goofed. We did Swamp Fox of the Revolution before we did Columbus, but that's okay. He's reading Peter Stuyvesant now, and it's really fun. They're written at a fifth grade level. We were theirs. We're like at a fourth grade level. Childhood of Famous Americans were a third grade level. So those were the books in every school library in the 50s and 60s on into the 70s. And they're the ones that it's really fun to find. And I rarely, rarely find them anymore out in the wild, just being at thrift stores. And it's
Well,
always fun.
Jan, one of my eldest son's favorite books. This is the kid who read um, the Funkin' Wagnalls Encyclopedia from A to Z
Oh,
at the age of
wow.
7. He was the kid you had to go in at night and say, "Give me the flashlight, give me the book, you need to go to bed." But his favorite book series, I asked him this morning when I talked to him because we were celebrating his daughter's birthday. And I said, think back to your childhood and what was the favorite book series? And he said, Redwall by Brian Jakes. And he
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
he said, Mom, I've read every single one of them. And now he's reading them with his daughter. And this is something I wanted you to also talk about. So it's not just finding a book for your boy to read, but it's also reading to your boy. So, what kind of recommendations do you make for parents to find books for them to read with their children? Uh, Story time, if you will.
Well, the Red Walls, I already mentioned, the four guys who write the dragon books and stuff. And there are so many series, and boys and girls, they love series. They love finding the series. So there's Redwall, there's John Flanagan. Um oh, there are so many. I've just been reading a lot of good things about Brandon Moe and the Fablehaven series. So that's been fun to have people say really good things about those. But these series that you can keep reading, keep finding them, they're so wonderful. And even as a grown up, I mean, I'm sitting here at my desk looking at my series here. It's like, oh yeah, because I like mysteries. So, I have that author and that author and that author because I like series too.
Mhm.
Hardy Boys. I mean, Hardy Boys are great. Nancy Drews are great. Um, Encyclopedia Brown is great for
Gosh,
young
I had
boys.
forgotten that book. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, so
My
all,
kids read through all the Boxcar Children.
oh,
Um,
boxcars, Bobbsey
And I
twins.
used to get kind of offended because they would play orphans in the backyard, and I would think, no, wait a minute, here I am pouring my life into you guys, and there you are in my backyard playing orphans. And then a friend of mine reframed it for me. She said, you know what? She said, they're living in a creative experience. Let them have it. And I was like, oh, okay. So it's really not about me. And that made such a difference. Jan, I want to thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. This has been such a terrific conversation. You've been so inspiring to me. Now I'm going to have to make sure, because we're going to have probably the longest set of show notes I've ever created. I'll make sure I get them to you so you can give me the thumbs up before we share them out with all of our families. I want to thank all of our families for letting us come into your living room today. And now that we've spent time in Jan's living room, you have an aspiration. You can create sets of bookshelves like Jan has, and it would be amazing. Thank you all so much for trusting us today, and we'll look forward to joining you all again in the future. Jan, thank you. I can't begin to say enough. I've waited all summer for this conversation, and it surpassed my wildest dreams.
Happy to have been here. Thank you, my dear.
And I'm so glad to be your inaugural Zoom experience. I promise you it won't be your last.
Okay, thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again for joining us. We're glad to be a part of your educational community. You can help us grow our community even more by rating, reviewing, and subscribing to the show wherever you may be hearing this. Don't forget that you can access the show notes and watch a recording at demilearning.com/show or on our YouTube channel. We'll see you again next time. Until then, keep building strong foundations for lifelong learning.